Welcome once again to Times Television, and the program is On the Tee. This is a program which seeks to educate and inform you about golf. Nothing else but golf. Once again, you're with me, Peter Kanjere. And if you're just tuning in, this is Times Television and the program is On the Tee, a program in which we talk about golf vocabulary. As usual, I'm with our guest, Welkam Phiri, who will give us more insight on how golf is played, the format and scoring. Welcome, Mr. Phiri.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I've already introduced the subject, today we'll talk about scoring in golf and the format of play in golf. These are two critical things that we need to know about golf: scoring and the format of play. So, to get started, how many formats of golf do we have in golf? How many formats of play do we have in golf?
Okay. Thank you very much for welcoming me into the studio again to talk about golf, to give an idea to the public in terms of how the game is played and how the scoring is done. So I really appreciate that you gave me this opportunity to be here. In terms of formats, there are two broad formats in golf under the amateur umbrella. We've got what we call stroke play format, and the other format is called match play. Starting with stroke play. Under stroke play, we have other subcategories that will come under the stroke play. But stroke play in general means you are playing against the course itself. So last time when I was here, I mentioned that each and every golf course is rated. We've got holes with several several what we call stroke index ratings. That, in terms of the stroke index rating, it measures how difficult each hole is. So like if you're talking Lilongwe Golf Club, Lilongwe Golf Club is a 72 par-rated golf course. What it means is that if you are playing in a stroke play and you're playing at your very best on that particular day, then the score that you should shoot is 72. So under stroke play, what happens is that the handicap is ignored. You just play. In terms of the amateur category, we play in divisions. So you'll have, we have what we call A division, championship division, then A division and B division. The championship division, in terms of the handicap, I talked about handicap last time I was here. Anyone who is playing 9 handicap and below, these people, we call them champions. They play in their own category. And then we have another group, and this is the biggest group. I mean, in terms of the normal distribution, you know, that curve, you have 20% here, 20% there, then the rest are in the middle. So in terms of A division, that's where you have lots of average golfers. So from 10 to 18, if I'm not mistaken, 18 or 17. These are called A division golfers. Then we have the C division the B division golfers, handicap, say 19 to 24 in terms of the men's category. So when it's a stroke play competition, you will hit your ball up until you sink it. So that's why it's called stroke play. So each stroke counts. So if you are on a par 3, for example, which is the shortest hole on the golf course, you hit your first shot, second shot, up until the last. So, and at the end of the day, within your respective divisions, whosoever scores the least number of scores on that particular day wins the division. So if you are A division and your score is 70, for example, and the other guy shoots 96, then the one who shot 96 is come last. The one who shot 70, for example, will be your declared winner within that particular division. So that's how stroke play works. But under stroke play as well, we've got the subdivisions or the subcategory within the stroke play division. And we have what we call medal kind of format, where your handicap now is taken into account. So, for example, if your total number of strokes is 100, for example, and your handicap is 10, then you look at what the 100 is called your gross score for that particular day, which is the total number of strokes that you've taken. And you take away your handicap, which is 10, then your net score for that particular day will be 90. And that's what you in terms of deciding the winner, they will look at the one who's got the least number in terms of your net score for that particular day, and you win it. And this one doesn't distinguish between whether you are in championship division or A division or indeed B division, but we all play as competitors, and the distinguishing factor there will be the handicap. The handicap is your measure of your potential ability in terms of how best can you play when at any given point in time. And that's what will distinguish, in the medal category, will distinguish between the winner and those that will not be winners on that particular day. Then within the stroke play category as well, we've got what we call Stableford format. Stableford is a point scoring kind of format where, for example, on each particular hole, your handicap will come into play. So, for example, if you're playing off handicap 18, like for each golf course in the country, in terms of how difficult each hole is, the numbers have been assigned. So you will have the most difficult hole on the golf course will be rated stroke index 1, then 2 all the way up to 18. So if you're playing if you're playing off handicap 18, for example, what it means is that on each and every hole, if your score is what we call par, par means if it's a par 3, you shoot 3. If it's a par 4, you shoot 4. If it's a par 5, you shoot 5. So on each and every hole, if your score is par, then you've got, you make 3 points if your handicap is 18. And if you shoot 1 over the recommended score that you're supposed to make on that particular hole, then you get 2 points. If you do 2 more shots, then you get 1 point. 3, then you get 0. So at the end of the day, after you finish playing, so all the scores are corrected, and for you to decide who the winner is, you calculate whosoever has got the most points. So sometimes when you see in the papers, they will say the winner in this Stableford category got 40 points, and maybe the second 39. What it means that on each and every hole, the points that you make, they added together, and you come up with the one who's got most points and is declared the overall winner. There is also another variation within the Stableford format, and this one is called individual bogey. Individual bogey is where you don't assign the points, but you look at the minimum that you're supposed to get on that particular hole. If you get it, you get a plus. If you exceed it by 1, you get minus. You get 0. If you exceed it by 1, then you get minus. So at the end of the day, you just have to sum up all your minuses and zeros and pluses, then you get to a number, a specific number. So for example, if you have if you make a par on a specific hole, you give yourself a 0. If you make one more shot on that particular hole, you give yourself a minus. So at the end of the day, you have to sum up. You have to look at all the pluses and all the minuses, and you come up to a specific number, and that will decide who the winner is. So
just to cut you short, so when you say a par, it means on every hole, there are a number of attempts that you are required for you to score. So in some hole, you have to take 3 shots for you to be at par.
exactly.
If you score with lesser shots, means under par.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You may continue.
Okay. So yeah. So you have the minimum number of shots that you're supposed to take on each particular hole. Like I mentioned, the shortest hole, like in all the golf courses, is what we call par 3.
It means 3 shots on that hole.
It means 3 shots on that hole. But there are times when you are, especially very good golfers, they take advantage of these short holes, so they will make 2 shots on that particular hole.
So that's a 2 under par.
That's 1 under par on that particular hole.
Okay.
And sometimes we've had occasions where people have hit 1 shot and the ball goes in, and that is called a hole-in-one. So anything is possible in golf. Even what you think sometimes to be the most easiest hole can punish you. On a par 3, you can end up with 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, whichever number that you can get on that particular
hole. Do we have these hole-in-ones regularly in the tournaments? Because I've seen on TV the likes of Tiger Woods, they would hit a long one over a long distance and hit a hole-in-one.
Yes, we've had I've witnessed some people who've had hole-in-ones at Blantyre Sports Club, Lilongwe Golf Club, but I mean, we are amateur golfers, and it's a very rare feat to have. And when you achieve it, sometimes you get punished for it. What we do in golf is, if you have a hole-in-one, then you are obliged to buy drinks for each and every golfer that's present at the end of that tournament.
Well, we're supposed to buy who? You've achieved a rare feat. I thought the other golfers are supposed to buy you.
I don't know. It's just a way of having golfers to celebrate with you. And I mean, usually the one who's celebrating success is the one who is supposed to treat all the golfers that are there. But that's the rule in golf. If you hit a hole-in-one, you buy drinks for everyone.
I seem to have interrupted you because you were talking about the first format, stroke play, and then under stroke play you were also mentioning about the medal format, then you were explaining about the Stableford format. Any more explanation on the format?
Yes, I spoke about the Stableford, then the individual bogey format.
Okay.
Then the next format is what we call the match play. Match play is when player A plays against player B. And you play hole by hole. So you compete on each and every hole. What usually happens there is because golf is a very fair game, it takes into account your potential ability, as I've mentioned. So what we do in match plays is that your handicap will come into play. So, for example, if I'm playing off handicap 14 and the person that I'm playing against is handicap 3, for example, what it means then is that we'll look at the golf course and we'll be saying for each hole that is rated between 1 and 11, because my skills level are a bit lower, so the other player will give me an extra shot. So if it's a par 3, for example, what we get is that I'll be playing it as if it's a par 4. And if I shoot 4 and my opponent shoots 3, then we've got the same score on that particular hole. So in golf, in match play, we say that hole has been halved.
So we'll take a short break. When you come back, we'll continue with the program in which we are explaining about stroke play and match play. If you're just tuning in, this is On the Tee, a program in which we talk about golf. In this topic, we're talking about golf scoring and formats, and I'm with our guest, Mr. Welkam Phiri. We'll be back after a short break. And if you're just joining us, this is the On the Tee, a program in which we talk about golf, how golf is played, so that maybe you may feel interested in getting to know golf and why not even play. And today I'm chatting with the golf expert, Mr. Welkam Phiri, who is explaining to us first the format of playing golf, and very shortly we'll be looking at the scoring in golf. You were explaining about the types of golf play and the formats themselves. You're talking about stroke play and match play. And you started explaining a little bit about match play, saying in match play, it's about one golfer versus the other. May you explain a little bit before we talk about scoring?
Okay, thank you very much. In match play format, basically, it's one player pitted against the other. So the idea is to find out who can withstand the pressure, because when you're playing it in this other category that we've already talked about, the Stableford category, you don't care about what your friend, your competitor is doing. All you care about is to get as many points as you can. So it's you against the golf course. You manage your game on your own without looking at what the others are doing. But when it's match play format, it's you against me. So the whole complexion of the game changes. What you're focusing on is how your friend is playing, how your competitor is playing, how they're hitting their shots, and sometimes pressure comes in because you play hole by hole. So if you lose the first hole, then the pressure is on you to make sure that on the next hole you're able to win it, so that you can be at the same footing with your competitor. So it's a different kind of game, ball game altogether. So as I was mentioning before we got into a short break, I was saying that golf is a very fair game, and it recognizes the fact that people have got different capabilities, golfers have got different abilities, and what it does is it gives the person who is not as skillful, so to speak, for lack of a better word, less skilled,
the amateur ones,
beginners, to have an advantage or to get to a level where they can compete favorably against the most skilled ones. So in that case, what happens is that if your handicap is lower than mine, then I get an advantage in a match play format. I get an advantage in terms of the difference between your handicap and my handicap. So for example, if I'm playing off 14 handicap and the other one is playing off 3 handicap, the difference between us is 11. So I get in that competition, match play competition, I get the benefit of 11 strokes over you. And how do you decide? Because the competition is played on a hole by hole basis. So how do you decide how to allocate those 11 strokes that you've given me? So we go back to the golf course, because on the golf course, each hole, as I've mentioned earlier on, is rated. And each hole is rated from 1 to 18. And 1 being the most difficult hole, and 18 being the easiest hole on the golf course. So if you're giving me 11 shots, it means I get an extra shot on each and every hole that's rated between 1 and 11. So if, for example, on a par 3, if the stroke index is 1, it means for you it's a par 3, but for me it's also a par 3, but I get an extra shot. So if you shoot...
So just to interrupt you, it means when it's a par 3 hole, it means the other one with a bigger handicap can have some more shots than the one who is more skilled. Is that correct?
Yes, very correct. So that's why I was saying if it's a par 3 and it's, for example, I get an additional shot. If you shoot a 3 on that hole and I shoot a 4, our score is the same. Yeah. And we move on to the next hole, so on and so forth, up until all the shots that you were giving me have been exhausted. Then on these other holes that are falling outside what you were giving me, we compete on an equal footing. But what you usually find is that when you're playing against somebody who's got a much, much lower handicap because their skill is better than mine, it doesn't matter whether they're giving me extra shots or not. At the end of the day, these people who've got lower handicaps tend to win these tournaments when we're playing on a match play format. There is also a variation to the match play format. Sometimes we play in teams. Golf is also a team sport where you can have 2 players playing against another 2. And what we tend to do there is if you're in a team of 2, you hit you tee off, both of you, and sometimes you go for the ball that's sitting very well on the golf course.
So who decides on the teams? Are the teams based on the handicaps, or you just agree, maybe friends coming together forming a team? Or is it based on the handicaps, or who decides the teams?
Okay, like what we tend to do here is usually for a very, very formal competition, if it's match play, it will just be the players are seeded. So you'll have the lowest ranked player seeded number 1 all the way to the highest ranked player in terms of the handicap. So then the combinations are made from there. So maybe the guy who's sitting on top will play the guy who's sitting on the bottom, so on and so forth. And that's for a very, very formal match play competition. But we tend to play match plays in teams on a social basis, on a casual basis, where sometimes it's charity golf and you want to make it more exciting, you want to have lots of fun on the golf course. That's when, in this amateur category, that's when we tend to play match play, what we call 4-ball, better ball. So if you tee off, if you are my partner and we finish the whole scoring differently, if your score is better, then we'll pick your score, and that's what we'll put down on the card. The other team also will pick their best score, and that's what we'll record there. So whosoever shoots the lowest, that's the score that you record. Then at the end of the day, you look at who's got, between the 2 teams, which team has got more points than the other, or who has won more holes than the other, and the team is declared the winner.
So in match play, since you are saying it's player versus player, which leads me to the next question. Do you have tactics in golf, saying, like in the way in the other sporting disciplines, where you readjust your approach to the game depending on how your counterpart is playing? You have well-defined tactics in which one can follow in golf.
Yes, we have, like I mentioned, match play is player A against player B.
Yes.
And obviously you analyze the game of your opponent. You look at how they play their game. Some golfers are very good at hitting the ball very far, but maybe very poor at finishing. That happens a lot. For example, on a par 4, some people will be on the green in 2, but maybe for them to sink the ball, they will putt 3-4 times. It happens like that. So you analyze the strengths and weaknesses of your opponent, and you look at your game as well, and you say, okay, how best can I defeat my opponent? How can I use my game to my own advantage against my opponent? So tactics are there. We employ them in different ways. For example, I don't hit the ball very far, but I am good at finishing short game. That's my strength. So when I'm playing against a person who is hitting it very, very far, I don't even care. I know that when the time comes to finish it off, I can easily finish it off. So that's the tactic that I use. I don't get shaken by how far my opponent is gone. But as I mentioned, match play is a high-pressure kind of game. Sometimes you can come up with all sorts of tactics. But if you can't handle your emotions well, then you end up making all sorts of mistakes. So yes, tactics are there, just like in any other sport.
Unfortunately, time is not on our side. It was a pleasure having you to talk more about golf. Hopefully next time we invite you, you also avail yourself. It was a pleasure having you, Mr. Welkam Phiri.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
There we wind up this edition of On the Tee. In this program, we're talking about formats of playing golf and how the scoring is done. And if you hear something like under a par, it means those are the number of shots that you're supposed to take on a particular hole. So every hole has a number of shots that you're allowed to take for you to score. Until we meet again, this is your host, Peter Kanjere. Bye-bye.